Hey guys, it's actually pretty late, and I usually don't like record videos this late, but I had something on my mind, and it's been like ruminating. I feel like it's something I need to get off my chest before I lay down and go to sleep, but I won't be posting this until tomorrow. So, it's about the shadows, and I don't necessarily mean like outside dark forces or anything like that. I'm talking about the shadows within. Okay. So, I spend a lot of time talking about healing because I feel like this is the basis of the foundation. Okay. And once you get the foundation built, cornerstone built out of granite, once you get your foundation built, meaning you have a strong sense of self, you have a strong self love, you have confidence, you have strength, you have courage. Compassion and forgiveness are in that foundation as well. Okay. Once you've built that foundation, you're much more ready for what comes after the healing because the healing, while it is a continuous journey, it is not the end. So, we're going to talk about this in a stages of change way. Okay. Now, I like to use psychology because it's not just about the soul, it's not just about conquering the mind, it's about aligning, realigning the mind, body, and soul. Okay. So I don't talk a lot about body. That's something that is part of the next stage, I guess. Maybe it's even a part of the foundation, and maybe I should start talking about it. But I'm going to focus the stages of change based in a psychology and spirituality only in this particular video. Okay. So the 5 stages of change can be seen as your cycles that you will go through throughout your life. Okay. So, the very first stage is pretty much precognition. Okay, this is before you even realize there's a problem. Okay, so this is when you're deep in the programming. For example, in your childhood, we're very egocentric when we're children, and we don't really see the things that happen to us as an outside problem, but an an internal problem. And we internalize these things, and those become our negative thoughts in our brain as we get older. Okay. And this is before you even realize there's a problem because this feels normal to you. For example, if like before you go to school and you like really interact with a lot of other children, a particular aspect of your family life may have seemed normal to you because that was your childhood. For example, if you had a parent who was in addiction, um, maybe you had no idea that the other children's parents weren't like that. Or maybe you grew up in a low socioeconomic culture, and so it was normalized that everybody's parent had some form of addiction. And so you didn't even realize that this was an issue. So this is the first stage. You don't even know there's a problem. Okay. And then the second stage is it starts to cause problems in your life, but you're still not aware fully of what the problem is. Okay. And this is like when you get older and you start to have relationships and you don't even consciously think about it, but you seek out relationships that allow you to repair the relationship you had with your parents. Yes, this is truly a thing. And this is a psychological, it is Oh, and now I can't remember what it's called. Anyway, this is actually a thing that we psychologically do because, especially if we do not have a very good relationship with our parents, we seek out that attachment in adulthood to fix what was wrong about our childhood attachments, okay? Um, and we don't even realize that we're doing it, okay? But then we end up with all of these problems, and it's just stirring up all of the feelings that we had when we were egocentric as a child. Now it's infecting our adult life, and we're realizing I'm in a lot of pain, but I don't know why. Maybe you start going to therapy because you are dealing with depression, and then you get put on medications, and you're like, I'm still not feeling any better. And you're like, okay, there's got to be another reason. This is when you enter the third stage and you start to realize that there's a problem and you want to change. Okay, but you're still not fully aware of what that problem is centered around. Okay, so this is how you start looking at your life. You start becoming objective. You start going internally and starting to do the work. Maybe this is where you can consider shadow work, but I'm going to keep this in the psychology world only. Okay, you are going deeper into therapy. You are starting to really, truly instead of just trying to take the medication, you're doing work on the outside. You're starting to read books for my friends who have borderline personality disorder. You want to read I Hate You, Please Don't Leave Me, or for people that have PTSD, The Body Keeps Score. You start reading books to see what other people are going through, to maybe connect the dots and go, oh, okay, yeah, now I understand. And this leads into the fourth stage where you start to make changes. Okay, so we've always been told that the only time we're ever going to make change is when it becomes so painful to stay the same that you absolutely have to make that change. Okay, now this is not where it ends, because once you start to make the change, now go into the fifth stage, which is maintenance. Okay, when you make change, at first it is extremely hard. Your past keeps screaming at you, oh, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. Like, for example, if you are in recovery, that first 90 days of recovery, that first 90 days of recovery, the past is screaming at you so bad because all of that anxiety that you've been pushing aside by using is piling on and piling on and piling on. And you have to force yourself to keep moving forward, right? So this is maintenance. You have to keep working at it and working at it. Eventually, it's no longer work, it's a want, right? And now that change is no longer something you are trying to do. It has become a part of your personality, okay? So these are the 5 stages of change. Now let's go ahead and talk about this from a spiritual perspective, okay? Again, we're in this state, no idea that there's a problem, okay? Maybe you're an atheist, or maybe you're on the other end of the spectrum and you are religious and you are faithfully religious. And you have absolutely no idea that what your belief is tainted. And I say tainted because both of these, whether you look at it from the atheist perspective or from a religious perspective, they both teach separation. Okay, now if you look at it from the atheist perspective, not believing at all in a higher power, there is no connection, right? There's no connection because there's no soul. There's no higher power. So there is no connection. So that's separation, right? And if you look at it from the religious perspective, they teach you that God is outside of you. So there is a separation, okay? So even though these are two totally opposite things, these still are the same. You are not connected. Okay? And so, and one more thing about the religious side of things, that they teach you to seek outside of yourself. You have to go to someone else to have that connection to God, because you are not worthy enough for a connection to God, right? So again, it's still telling you that you are separate. So then we go into that second phase where you're just like, man, I've been trying to figure out, like, if you are on either one of these spectrums, okay, I've been trying to figure out why I feel so fearful or so anxious or angry. I don't know why. And it feels like it's normal because that's how we're programmed. And if you're in therapy, they, teach you how to deal. It's not necessarily how to heal, right? So then you go into this third stage where you're like, I gotta figure something out. I'm not the only one who feels like this. I'm not. So I'm gonna start doing a little bit of research. I'm gonna test out the waters, okay? Now, from an atheist perspective, this may never happen. This may always be a separation, but it doesn't necessarily have to be. Sometimes one person comes into their life and says one thing that they're like, that made sense. And maybe it has nothing to do with like an actual higher power, but energy. And this connection lights up a little spark, right? So there's something there, and you're like, okay, there's got to be more to this. So you start to dive in, right? And you start to see all of these different perspectives, all of these different things that are just like, that kind of makes me feel a little better. So then you go into this fourth stage, right? And you're like, I'm going to change. Maybe you start meditating. Maybe you start being a little more conscious of how you speak. Maybe you start trying to connect to nature. You spend a little more time disconnected from technology, distractions, noise. Then you start to heal. And you really truly face that which you have come across in your life, and you start to deprogram. Separating from the dogma was so hard. So hard. Separating myself from everything that I had been programmed to believe my entire life. And I'm not even just talking about religious dogma. I am talking about the system. I am talking about every single thing I had ever learned. Because once you start diving down that rabbit hole, it's absurd. Like absurd. So in that phase 3, when you start to awaken to the fact that everything you've ever known to be truth is not actually truth, that is the moment that it sparks the fourth stage. That change. You start diving off of the freaking cliff, and you dive head first into it, and you work so hard at deprogramming yourself and healing those trauma wounds that you may not even really understand. Because again, this is from a spiritual perspective, right? So you are learning, you are changing, you are redirecting your life. Okay? That's not where it ends, right? Because then there's maintenance. But when we get into the fifth stage of change, when it comes to a spiritual journey, this is when the shadows pop up. Because as you're changing, as you're healing, you find new shadows you never even knew were there. Every time you bring more light into your life, you reveal more shadows. And every time you reveal a new shadow, you have a choice to make. Do I stay with this shadow? Do I allow this shadow to stay in my life? Or do I transmute that energy, release that pain, and move in a different direction? So you have the 5 stages of change in both the psychological and the spiritual. You go through the exact same thing when it comes to your body, right? Absolutely. You go throughout your childhood, you're like, I can eat whatever I want to. You get into your 20s and you're doing the same thing, and then, like hit like 28 and you start to, every time you eat a cheeseburger, go downhill a little. And then, you're like, oh, I'll be all right. And then one day you wake up and you're like, I don't like myself anymore and it's time to change. And then you go and you change and you start changing those eating habits. You start changing what you drink. You start going to the gym. This is stage 4. But now you got stage 5. You've lost all the weight, but you got to continue to maintain that, right? You got to continue those same healthy habits. The stages of change are the same: mind, body, and soul. So, when I speak of things from both a psychological perspective and a spiritual perspective, I do this so you can align the mind with the soul. Okay? Because we have to align. If we don't, and we push aside the mind completely, and we ignore the psychological portion of things, then we are denying the fact that we have an egoic mind. It's not going to go away. We have to learn how to override it. It's not going to go away. It's our safety mechanism. Oh my gosh, I just heard something funny. You could totally override the safety mechanism. Totally. We'll see how well that works. And then I heard a whoop, 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 self-destruct in 30 minutes. I love my mind. It's so funny. Okay, guys. That's enough for this. I hope you guys have a fantastic day, because I'm going to sleep. I'll record the short for this in the morning. So, good night.